came out at that time.
I only come up for nights. Once I enter my house like this, that's the end.
Wow.
My house.
Coming in through, I had to park at the MTN shop and walk down to Chandelier to go and meet up the person I was supposed to meet up with.
It as well. All right. Freshly pressed on the smooth breakfast here on Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life on a Tuesday morning. The month of October is gradually coming to an end. Today is the 28th day of the month, and we are looking forward to November. And of course, that means that December and the festivities are around the corner, but we need to live in the now and in the present. And let's deal with what's on the table in front of us. My name is Ayokunmi. Great to have you join us on another interactive session where we get to take a look at the stories in the papers and making the rounds, making the headlines, and getting everybody talking. You get to be a part of the show as well by sending in your messages, your thoughts, your contributions to us, and you know that we always love to hear from you. So please join us on WhatsApp and on YouTube as well. On WhatsApp, the number is 0911 999 0981. 0911 is the WhatsApp number. You can find us on YouTube streaming live at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Leave your comments in the chat box there. And no worries, I'll be getting to them ASAP. All right, joining me this morning to take a look at the stories, as he always does on a Tuesday in the flesh in the studio. Chibuzor is with me. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Lagos. And good morning, everybody listening from wherever you are in the world.
Yes, indeed. In some cases, good afternoon or good evening, or even good
Well,
evening.
whatever time this program meets you, uh, um, it's a good day, and let's take it as it is.
It's a good day. Let's take it as it is and make it into what it is that we want it to be at the same time. We're going to be talking about a couple of things. Now, the first two stories we're talking about border on security. Now, let's start in the Guardian before we segue into the connecting story. Now, this one says that residents of Bazar community and surrounding villages in the Yabo local government area of Sokoto State have raised an alarm over a 15 million naira levy imposed or allegedly imposed on them by suspected armed bandits. Now, the communities are under the Sokoto South Senatorial District and are currently represented by the former governor of the state, that's Senator Aminu Waziri Tambuwal. Now, some of the community members said the bandits had warned that failure to pay the ransom could lead to a series of violent attacks on the communities. This is another chapter, or should I say, another episode in the saga that we're facing concerning insecurity in the country. Not the first time we'd be hearing about issues like this. We know what's been going on in Katsina State and so on and so forth in terms of the peace deals with bandits and everything. Now, this is an area that is represented by the former governor of Sokoto State, and here we are, 15 million, alleged 15 million naira levy, or else there'll be violence meted on the communities. We're here again.
Okay.
Deep breath.
I think I'm about to eat my words from some moments ago. Um, it's how do we look at this? This is if I was going to write a novel to capture some of these things, if it's fictional or non-fiction, I'll probably title this Ungoverned Spaces, and that's what we're seeing a lot of in Nigeria today, especially in parts of Nigeria, even in places where you have government or governance active, you have a lot of these powers and forces who seem to operate above the constitutional powers that should be managing these areas or should be given or providing a safe space for the citizens of the country. And unfortunately, we've been unable to resolve this problem, which has grown and has grown unchecked, almost unchecked, because I wouldn't say unchecked because of the efforts of the Nigerian security forces over the years. and obviously the lives that have been lost in trying to stop the expansion of this kind of activities.
Yeah.
But we've unfortunately been unable to stop it. It seems to have gone, from top burner to something that is doesn't attract as much press as it used to years ago, because for some way we've either chosen to normalize it, or like we have seen in places like Katsina and some other states where they are open, Zamfara, where there are open negotiations, there are appeasements, there are payments, there are a lot of things happening that the government is either not too open with the information about what's happening, because we know that if you are having negotiations with these individuals, whatever you want to call them, bandits, terrorists, I think I would stop at those two options. I would rather prefer terrorists, really, because these are, when you talk about bandits, you're thinking about people are coming to steal and go. These are guys who are basically holding the state and the people of the state to ransom.
Terrorizing them.
They are
In a
terrorizing
nutshell.
them. Basically, the English word captures it completely. That is what they are doing. They are basically holding people to ransom. They are not elected officials. They are not even selected officials. They are people who, by the force of having a gun or weapons, which are able to inflict pain and damages to the people, have decided to take over powers for themselves. And in a lot of places, what the government has chosen in this time, either for because maybe that is the most expedient solution, or that seems to be the most plausible solution that they can bring up, is to negotiate with them and give back. And I think the last time we were talking about negotiation, I said, okay, what is, because when you walk into a negotiation, it's like when you want to buy a shirt. The question you ask, you tell yourself, when you tell yourself subconsciously or consciously, this is how much I have to spend. These are my limits, basically. And the question I would ask the government when they go into these negotiations: how far are they willing to go to appease these individuals? Because unfortunately, it's rare to stop. Apart from maybe in these instances, we have not seen an instance where a particular bandit or terrorist or whatever they call them have actually dropped their weapons and have chosen not to go back to battle. In most cases, what we see is continuous series of negotiations. The day they get unhappy, in fact, what they do largely, it's not even about they get unhappy. When they will negotiate, what we are seeing a lot more these days is that they either reduce the harm they're inflicting and just reduce it to collecting money from people who are already impoverished, because they are really able to go about their commercial and economic activities because of the presence of these individuals. Now they're asking people who have struggled, who are basically struggling to keep their heads above water, to pay particular amounts of money in a particular state that is represented by an individual. Forget the fact that it's even represented by the former they are supposed to be represented by the former governor. It is, even if whoever was representing them, what is this individual doing? What are these individuals doing in order to draw attention to their plight? And this also dovetails into the larger problem of the federal government. We've had in the last week or weekend, we had the changes of the service chiefs, which is the story that we're dovetailing into. You know, in we've changed personnel before at great cost, because I know Mr. C spoke about this a lot yesterday. I think I spoke about this the last time we did make these changes. That one of the things we take for granted, and maybe it's because we think that we have a very large population and we have many people that can replace. So even when we talk about deaths, we say number of people died. Instead, when we look at human capital, the state spends a lot in training army officers. There is a lot of cost. If they actually are going to put this into a cost center, Nigerians should be shocked at how much had gone into training, retraining these individuals. And by one swoop of a pen, we would remove chunks of them because we had to promote somebody who was far junior to them. I think it's something that we need to consider over a period of time, because one of the, I know people that would come pro and against this activity, those actions, but one of the side effects of that is that you end up politicizing the structures, because people now see, if I do serve this particular individual who is either a shining star who is going to rise to that point, at some point I'll be able to reclaim the gains of my service. Instead of something that is seen as a line of seniority, that okay, within this cadre, within this class, because I have grown, and growing is you're not being promoted just because you are there or you exist. We are promoted because you are proven that you are worth to be promoted. So if you are promoted somebody or people individuals steadily to that point, when you say you cannot take any of them to replace to fit into those roles, what you are saying is either they're incompetent or they've been wrongfully promoted or did not fit into your needs. We're not talking about one or two individuals. I'm talking about an entire class of individuals that are saying, okay, do not fit into your needs
Right,
or your
right.
requirements. So that is one other problem. But if you go back to the first stories, how do we solve this issue of ungoverned spaces? How do we give Nigerians the confidence that they do have a government that is actually that they actually report or actually that they have actually chosen or elected? How do we stop this kind of instances? Because it's growing and it's been ongoing for a while. It's just that it's come to full notice of everybody in recent days, or it's gotten a lot more air time in recent days. But this is something that has been happening for a long time. We've been hearing of it for ages, where bandits, whoever takes over communities and asks them to pay either their produce, whatever economic value they have, whatever things they have to make payments. How do we put an end to our people being held to ransom? So maybe that's one of the things that the president has discussed with his new service chiefs, his new expensively assembled group of service chiefs, I would say. That and maybe some of that's the remedy that he's giving them. And we hope that after a while we can also measure their effectiveness and maybe avoid having to sack them and cost the state another set of funds and individuals that should have been serving through their time. So I don't know that it's a story that it's just like we're going around in circles. But I hope that
Mm.
one day we'll break out of this maze and get to the end point that we're looking for.
Okay, it's actually interesting that you bring up the issue of ungoverned spaces, which is a very, very big problem. We've highlighted this at different times. Areas around the country where for long stretches, long kilometers, and so on and so forth, there's no security presence and so on. Now, as you also mentioned, we've changed service chiefs at various different times. Not the first time, probably not the last time as well. Now, looking at what you talked about in terms of ungoverned spaces and so on, this issue that we're facing right now, could it be beyond the service chiefs, no matter who is in that position?
So it's not just a like you're rightly sure. It's not just a matter of security forces or having service chiefs move around their security forces like pieces of chess. There's so much the army or the armed forces can do. We have a limited number of people in the armed forces. We have a limited number of personnel that can be deployed to spaces. So we need to also look at it from a more strategic point. Every plan, even if you look at what all the major wars in the world, and we are not even with every military plan, there was the post-military plan for development and resolution of issues. So you can take a look at economic plans like the Marshall Plan, and there were several plans across history. Anybody who's going to pay attention, who wants to take time, should just look at that. So it's not just a military solution. There's also an economic solution to the problem. What has led to these places being or these areas being open to this kind of threats? How do we resolve those issues? A lot of it has been economic. Some of it people claim are environmental. What steps are we taking to resolving those problems, to increasing the effectiveness of government at all levels? Because even spaces that we look at today that are not currently being besieged by this kind of threats, do they have the potential in going in those directions if care is not taken? Those are the questions we need to ask ourselves as a people, and also the government needs to ask itself and put in those plans at the moment. So it's
Right.
looking at it holistically and seeing over the time. I see. Once we go and solve this military problem by wiping out these people, if we do that tomorrow, what do we leave behind to prevent them from coming back?
$1 million question.
So, but we need to start from somewhere. We need to sort this problem out.
All
We
right.
can't keep negotiating and giving people money that they can use to go and recoup and come back later.
Alrighty, Ajayi Oluniloa in Magodo Jerry Sherry on WhatsApp says, "Good morning, Ayo and Chibuzor. Good morning to you. It's not surprising to hear this one from the bandits." He says, "Well, we call them terrorists because that's really what they are." In Sokoto State, since their counterparts in Katsina State had succeeded in holding the state government to ransom, it's terrible that our governments are so helpless now that they have surrendered the lives and properties of their citizens to these killer bandits. May God help us. May God help us indeed. And you just raised a very good point. I mean, when one sees that somebody else did something without consequence, I mean, it just gives them
Yeah.
that impetus that, hey, they did it and got away. Why can't we do it as well? And this is what you get. And this is where we are right now. Anyways, let's Let's dive back into the punch. Where the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, that's the ICPC, has called on attorneys general, and commissioners for justice in the Southwest region to ensure full enforcement of the Supreme Court judgments granting financial autonomy to local governments across Nigeria. Now, the chairman of the ICPC, Mr. Musaliu, made the call during a roundtable engagement with officers of the Commission and Attorneys General from the Southwest held on Monday in Akure, the Ondo State capital. Here we are again. This issue of local government autonomy and the fact that on paper, yes, it's a done deal, but in in practice, we're still talking about it till now, over a year later.
I don't need to laugh. I'm holding back the urge to laugh at this comment. Why is it? Not because of what he's saying is, as in the, let me not say what he's saying, but the essence of the point he's trying to push forward is not correct or factual. But it's the basis and the environment that we live in today. So I would call out the attorney generals and commissioners for justice, which I know a lot of people have argued against, even the fact that both roles are put together and put in one individual, serves at the behest of the state governor. Basically, like every other member of that of the governor's cabinet. So the governor can basically hire and fire. His role is largely to advise the governor and to manage the state's legal affairs on behalf of the governor. So supposed to be an expert, or at least somebody who's knowledgeable in that area, who can manage the administration of the state's legal practice and everything around the state for with relations to the law and enforcement of the law, at least at that level. That is his role. He serves at the behest of the governor. If the governor, for instance, so when you say somebody serves at the behest of the government, means the governor can basically hire and fire. The governor does not need to go and look at any doesn't need to go to the court to fire his attorney general. He can just wake up in the morning and say, you know what, thank you for your service. I don't need your services anymore. The worst that can happen is if, given Nigeria the way things happen, he would probably have to go back to his party people and say, give me somebody from the same area, or whatever consideration that they want to take. But he can hire and fire. And where am I going to with that? If the governor himself is not in support of the autonomy or the financial autonomy of the local governments in his state, and we have seen some governors who have gone to court to challenge that, who have actually gone to court or made comments against those actions. I'm not sure how many have gone to court, but I know that several of them have made comments against it. And you can see by what has happened in their states that the local governments haven't been able to get the required levels of autonomy. What do you expect the Commissioner of Justice to do? The best is that if he is somebody who, if he wants to go by his own what's the word? By his own, maybe some ethical standards, if he actually believes in it, the best he does is put in his letter of makes his comments and puts in the level of resignation and say, you know what, I can't serve under a government who has chosen not to follow, what has come in from the Supreme Court, or this constitutional right,
the rule of law,
basically. The rule of law, basically. But I will be, whenever that happens in Nigeria, it becomes news, really. So we see very little of that happening. What they tend to do is basically push the governor's agenda through the legal processes and support it across. But that is their job. That is the remedy they've been given. If you had a system where these guys, for instance, were elected, maybe if you had an attorney general of the state, who was elected, for instance, if you separated both roles. So you had a separate rule for the Commissioner of Justice, and you had an Attorney General rule, where the Attorney General was either maybe elected or came in through some seniority and went to the bar, like the same way you choose your heads of your court heads. Then maybe he would have some constitutional mandate to be able to stand on those things and use the powers of the law to be able to push those things together, push those things forward. So it's a bit high asking these guys to do anything against what bosses are saying at the moment. So what does should the head of the ICPC be looking at? The same way, for instance, that the DSS took, I think DSS went to court on a particular issue in terms which was the issue that they went to in recent times. You know, there was some, sorry, it escapes me now. The ICPC also should look at it and look at within our mandate, within our laws, can we go and actually try to use the legal instruments to force those governors to actually take these actions that have been guaranteed under the rule of law, or at least get them to and put forward if there's any punishments or anything that can be held to actually move them to do it forward using legal instruments. But relying on the commissioners for justice is a waste of their time. It's a waste of all of us time, and it just for me it's just blowing hot air into the wind.
Just blowing hot air into the wind. Huh. Very interesting summation there. Let me take a message or two before we talk about some oil related matters. Dangote is in the news once again. Gilbert Musa in Festa. Good morning to you, Gilbert. He says, on the demand from the bandits slash terrorists in Sokoto State, we need to have a state of the art database system that can identify persons in all communities and local government areas. We equally need to track phone calls. These two, if effectively implemented, will give us a lead as to the persons perpetrating these attacks and threats within communities. It's interesting that when some people's phone numbers want to be tracked, it's doable. But of course, where other people are concerned, it's bread box.
Given Musa, I can tell you that within the technology that is available and the systems that are doing, and even in practice, you know, tracking of calls can happen and will happen based on the need. And there are laws that back it up. There's lawful interception and stuff like that that back up the ability of security forces to do that. I don't think those are the challenges that they have. Yes, in terms of being able to recognize or identify all Nigerians, that is still a work in progress. And it's not so much of a database issue, it's more of a data management issue and a process. It's like having our censuses. You can only count those people that you see. So if a bandit has not shown up for years and has not been anywhere, you can't even identify him. So how are you going to identify him? But guess what? The irony of it is that people know who these guys are, either by name or by reputation.
Ironically speaking. All right, let's step into the vanguard. As I mentioned earlier, we're talking matters regarding the petroleum sector, where the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, the oil side of things, that's Heineken Okobiri, says the federal government will fully support the Dangote refinery in achieving its 1.4 million barrels per day refined products target. He said this on Monday in Lagos during his welcome address at the 19th Africa Downstream Energy Week. Now, he described the refinery's expansion plan as a major milestone for Africa's energy independence and a validation of the government's policy direction under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. This is one man and one refinery, trying to boost capacity from about 650,000 to 1.4 million barrels per day that the government says they will support. But what's the government doing on its own part as well with its own refineries? I just had to ask that.
Okay, so
I had to put that out
you see, the minister is saying what is within his remit to say. So basically, I look at it from this viewpoint. We are trying to attract investors. We are trying to give investors who are here and those who want to come in a sense of confidence that the government will provide a good environment for them to keep investing and keep expanding. So in that tone, saying all the right things to Dangote, who is a major investor into that sector and into Nigeria generally, is something that is good and also sends the right messages across to anybody else who's looking in. On the other tone, if you are one who is skeptical of the fact that like you said, one man is handing is basically been given keys to the has been given the keys to the chest, or it appears that the government is taking putting all their flags in this one or in this one basket or this one totem pole, then if you're an investor who was looking to come into that space, for instance, you're looking at, what, if I want to compete, will the space be open enough for me to compete in? And those are the insinuations that have been made, but unfortunately, I don't think we've seen anybody who's actually tried to push and say, what, I also want to compete in this space at that scale. So there's nothing wrong in saying, what, giving Dangote the comfort that, we will support. For me, government, what I always like to sidestep the issue about these refineries Um, I think, and I think that apart from Nigeria holding on to strategic reserves, which can be done in several ways, and you hold on strategic reserves to ensure that you're always, to also manage your energy independence, like a buzzword that the minister tried to use there, to make sure that sometime if you have any shortages, you always have something to hold on to. I think, and I've always thought that we should have gotten rid of those refineries years ago when we could have. But I think we are now caught up in, there are two things. There are two possible things. Possibility one is that we cannot salvage, or there are three possible things. Possibility one is that we cannot salvage the refineries in without incurring more cost that basically raises the value of those refineries. That is possibility one, that from a financial position we cannot salvage the refineries, right? So we're either thinking of, should we shut them down? As when I say salvage, you cannot get refineries working up to the state they need to do to be able to push out or compete.
After all the money
So
spent.
that is a consideration that maybe the experts can come out, and if you are being truthful to ourselves, we need to access and say this is where it is. Possibility two is what is largely sunk cost fallacy. So we've gotten to the point where, like you said, we've thrown a lot of money into this thing that we are thinking that it's a sunk cost, and because of the amount of money we've thrown into this, we are choosing that we cannot walk away from it, that we keep throwing into money to make it work, because our end goal has to be that we have to show that it can work to people. You know, for me, both options are tied to the same point, and I see, if you are caught in those traps, at some point we have to ask ourselves, how much more do we need to throw into this? Maybe we can salvage the refineries and into producing other things. That is, like I was telling somebody yesterday, we don't have to be producing PMS from the refineries to say that refineries are working. There are other byproducts of
A lot of other byproducts.
of crude oil, and the process that the refining process. If you are buying engine oil or gear oil, whoever has bought service their car recently, how much those things
Oh,
cost.
goodness gracious.
If, for instance, the NNPC could provide those things at good cost, and from those refineries, or whoever is running the refinery, Nigerian refineries can provide them at good cost, it will go a long way to reduce the cost of things in Nigeria. So maybe we need to start looking at this problem from another angle, and probably leave Dangote and his likes to be able to, sort out that other space. But will the end with our refineries, all four of them, or how many of them are left now? Because we're not even sure which one is in what shape. Would they be ever able to compete or even support what is coming out of the Dangote refinery at some point? Nobody can tell us, or nobody is coming forward with that news. There are all sorts of panels reviewing what and all that. It's the usual Nigerian entertainment system. But nobody's actually coming to tell us that, based on what we have on board, and which is where I think we should focus on, based on where the refineries are today, we're able to get them up to this possibility, and this is what we're going to be doing. And it can be done if we do A, B, C, and D. And I think that's where organizations like Pengasan and New Peng, all these trade unions that are always quick to go to strike on short-term issues, should actually push and drag the government to the table and say, we want to be part of this discussion. We have professionals in this area. We have professionals that we want on these committees to actually be able to review the state of the Nigerian refineries and give Nigerians a clear position on where we are. But unfortunately, they are more interested in other short-term things and collecting union fees. At least for my own position. Let me add the word reportedly. Or what's the word that we always add now to our comments? Supposedly, that's something that anything that keep me out of legal problems, but that is where I see them allegedly. Thank you very much, Ayo.
That's the word.
Yeah.
But it's actually very interesting. Nigeria's OPEC quota is about 1.5 million barrels per day. The Dangote refinery is pushing to reach 1.4 million barrels per day in such a short space of time. And it's very interesting that after decades and decades, we've struggled to actually meet said quota.
So the quota is for production. This is refining. So we are producing, extracting what they're sending to the Dangote refinery for them. So because of if you're looking at the quota, what they are looking at in terms of their quota is what they're able to output from their refining. So it's loosely ties to that number, but might not be an exact reflection of that number. But hey, the Dangote refinery has been put at great costs. There's major investment. So Nigeria needs to do all it can to keep its current investments and ensure that Nigerians get the value either through taxes or through services of those investments and those supports.
All right, let's run through your contributions and thoughts here on WhatsApp. Barrister Danukuda in Igodo says, good morning, crew. Good morning to you. It takes more than appointing new service chiefs to tame the present insecurity challenges facing the country. There should be multi-level cooperation, including having the political will, reduction of poverty, cooperation of politicians, among other things, to tame the monster. A monster it actually is. Fabian Inekwe says, I hope the president has given the new service chiefs their KPIs, ensuring the safety and security of Nigerians as top priority. He should stop giving these terrorists and bandits a soft landing. The punishment should fit the crime. All right, good morning to you, Fabian. Michael says, morning, fresh people. Morning to you as well. On a serious note, do you know that ChatGPT has better ideas than what our government is touting as solutions to current issues? I ran the government's current policies through AI, and you would be surprised at the negative feedback on security and educational policies. The world is evolving, but we seem to be stuck. Okay. Joseph Many in Silver Estate says, it's unfortunate how impunities and shenanigans are drowning Nigeria gradually. Hearing the former governor alerting Nigerians that terrorists are forcing taxes upon the state, but he didn't say anything about so-called terrorists becoming repentant and being integrated into the security architecture and society. It was the people of the community that were raising that particular alarm, not the former governor. Bottom line is that some of the northern elites, politicians, and certain individuals in government are behind the escalating insecurities in the country. Ewa Nuniru says, new service chiefs, same old, and nothing changes still. Let them start work first now, Ewa. Then we can begin to talk about whether or not it's the same old or new. Victor says, morning team, how will the government and INEC hold an election when we're having ungovernable spaces within the country? Hope this is not a plot similar to what Jonathan faced when he postponed the 2015 election using mercenary. What does that even mean? I'm not even sure what that means.
I'm not sure myself.
And Ajayi says, but why must government now focus solely on Dangote refinery when its own refineries are lying fallow? It's absolutely intriguing. Well, this is Nigeria. Everything we seem to do or go through is intriguing. If it weren't, then it's not Nigeria. Anyways, we need to call it a morning on the show. It has been an interesting one. Thank you all so much for all your messages and your thoughts as well. Always good to read from you. Big thank you to you, Chibuzor, for making it a great start to the Tuesday morning.
Thank you very much, Ayo. Thank you very much, Lagos, and our listeners from wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
All right, have a great Tuesday, and of course, keep fighting the good fight. Lagos, thank you all so much once again for keeping it tuned to Freshly Pressed this Tuesday morning, 8:15. It's all about what goes on in the entertainment world, gist and everything. Trust me, there are a number of things that we need to iron out. The Grapevine at 8:15 here on Smooth 98.1. Keep it tuned. The story.